Okay, so what if the rise and fall of the world's absolute greatest civilizations actually had nothing to do with economics, or political shifts, or even military might? Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive into a fascinating ancient text that argues this grand cycle of human history ultimately comes down to just one single thing: the spiritual condition of the human heart. It's a completely profound, almost wild lens through which to view history, and we're going to break it all down step by step.
Let's just jump right in by looking at our first source text. In Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 19, it states, "And I will give them one heart, and I will put a new spirit within you, and I will take the stony heart out of their flesh, and will give them an heart of flesh." Now, what the text is describing here is essentially a spiritual surgery. It's about removing something that is hard, proud, and completely lifeless, and literally replacing it with something that beats, feels, yields, and actually lives.
You know, we so often think of self-improvement as just tweaking our habits, right? Improving our manners, or just checking off boxes and following the rules. But what's really interesting here is how the text draws a strict distinction. You can have picture-perfect manners and outwardly follow absolutely every rule to the letter, but still possess a hard, self-centered, stony heart. The ultimate goal the source is pointing to isn't just behavioral modification. It's undergoing the deep, transformative miracle of having that stony heart totally removed and made new.
So what does this massive heart surgery actually look like on a societal scale? To illustrate this, the text points us to a really dramatic historical account in 3 Nephi. We're talking about a remnant of people who survived literal civilization-shattering destructions. Imagine sinking cities, raging fires, massive earthquakes, events that literally shattered the pride of their entire society. The text emphasizes that these survivors were brought incredibly low. The arrogant voices were completely silenced. They were this humbled remnant, softened by extreme affliction, and because of that, they were uniquely prepared to actually hear and receive the voice of God when Jesus Christ descended into their broken world.
And the result of that encounter? Honestly, it's staggering. In 4 Nephi chapter 1, verse 2, the record states, "There were no contentions and disputations among them, and every man did deal justly one with another." I mean, just really think about that for a second. An entire society with absolutely no envy, zero strife, no tumults whatsoever. This wasn't just some temporary religious high, you know? Their very nature, their actual society, had been permanently rewired.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core point of our source material. The miracle here was fundamentally about changed souls. Look at how it shifted. Pride completely melted away into humility. Selfish ambition gave way to holiness, and these deep, bitter divisions were replaced by a profound unity. And here's the kicker. They didn't build this kind of utopian society through clever tax policies or superior economic systems. They built it because their stony hearts were literally replaced with hearts of flesh.
But, of course, this brings us to a massive, dramatic pivot point in our explainer. If a society actually reaches this absolute peak of harmony and justice, how on earth do they inevitably fall right back into darkness? Like, why doesn't the peace just last forever? How do incredibly blessed people end up forgetting God?
Well, the text maps out this tragic, almost inevitable 4-generation cycle. It goes like this. The first generation intimately knows Christ. The second generation, well, they know the people who knew Christ. But by the third generation, they've inherited the peace, sure, but they haven't inherited the deep, personal conversion that actually created that peace. And then by generation 4, it's completely gone. They've inherited the wealth and the security, but living faith is just wiped out. They're basically living comfortably off what righteous people built, completely failing to preserve the righteous hearts that made it possible in the first place.
And once that living faith vanishes, society just enters this unstoppable freefall. The abundance they inherited quickly breeds entitlement. That entitlement rots into idleness. Idleness ferments right into vanity. And that vanity, it results in total spiritual blindness. It's a tragic formula. What the fathers built with blood and tears, the children spend in comfort, and the grandchildren totally squander through pride. As the text suggests, prosperity literally poisons the ungrateful heart.
And here is the really stark warning. The source argues this isn't just one tragic story about some isolated ancient civilization. No, this is history's unmistakable pattern. It's like the default gravitational pull of human nature, repeating itself over and over and over again across multiple eras of scriptural history.
To give you an example, let's look at the ancient Israelites. In Judges chapter 2, verse 10, the text shows that after the era of Joshua, a leader who served God and saw these mighty, undeniable miracles, there rose another generation which knew not the Lord. And what did they do? They immediately turned to idols. Naturally, this threw them into a brutal era of oppression. Eventually, things get so bad, they cry unto God, they enter an era of deliverance, they prosper once again, and then boom, they contract spiritual amnesia all over again. It's just this endless, incredibly frustrating loop of idolatry, oppression, deliverance, and then totally forgetting.
And we see the exact same thing happen during Israel's legendary Golden Age. Even under incredible leaders like King David and King Solomon, the trap still snaps shut. Think about it. Massive prosperity breeds luxury. That luxury breeds compromise. And eventually, that compromise breeds full-on apostasy. Ultimately, the text points out that this exact, identical pattern of prosperity leading to apostasy is what caused their magnificent kingdom to completely divide and fall.
The Book of Mormon repeats this relentless, unstoppable cycle so often that it essentially becomes an undeniable law of human history. Righteousness leads to prosperity. Prosperity inflates into pride. Pride collapses into wickedness. Wickedness brings destruction, which finally forces humility, and then, only then, does humanity turn back to God. History just keeps moving in these circles, simply because the human heart naturally drifts back towards stone unless it is actively softened.
So what does this all mean for us today? Well, the text makes it absolutely clear. When we're facing societal decay, the answer isn't merely writing better laws or building stronger institutions or, printing more money. Those are just band-aids. The ultimate answer to societal decay has to be a profound spiritual renewal that happens deep within the soul. Prosperity is always going to become a poison unless there's a higher mechanism in place to keep human hearts genuinely humble.
We can really synthesize the source's entire philosophy right here. It all boils down to this. Civilizations rise and fall. Families rise and fall. Individual men and women rise and fall. And the ultimate trajectory for every single one of them is entirely dependent on what happens inside the human heart. Macro-level survival always begins with micro-level spiritual transformation.
Which brings us to a final simple prayer found in the text. Lord, take this stony heart. Remove hardness, pride, selfishness, and unbelief. Give me a heart of flesh. It's a really beautiful plea to remain soft in a world that naturally wants to harden us. And that leaves us with a pretty profound, provocative question to ponder today. If the survival of history itself depends on a softened heart, what is the current state of your own?